Hi all, welcome back to Beanie Composter. If you're new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe so we can keep bringing you great videos like this one. And if you've been watching for quite a while, then this one should interest you. At this time of the year, we're in midsummer, everything's scorching hot, and our hot bin is right up to temperature. Have a look here. I've actually give it a clean because I don't know about you, but in some of the videos it's been quite hard to focus on what the temperature is, but we're just over 60 degrees there. And when you're at those sort of temperatures, then you can pretty much put whatever you want in this hot bin. So you can put cooked food, raw chicken bones, raw fish bones, all that sort of stuff. But there's certain things that you can't put in the hot bin, even if it is working this well. So today I'm going to explain to you certain things that you shouldn't be putting in your hot composting bin. So you go to empty your kitchen caddy to mix all your ingredients up, and you notice the other half's put loads of kitchen towel tissues and just thrown them in your hot bin caddy. Well, that's one thing that shouldn't be going into your hot bin, because once they get wet, they're just going to clog together and you're not going to get the airflow coming through. So most importantly, if someone's thrown loads of tissues like that in your composting mix, make sure you take them out before you put it in the hot bin. As well as your paper towel could block and stop the airflow, if you put paper and cardboard that hasn't been properly torn up, so you just take it like that and you just throw it in there, that's also going to create the same effect. It's just going to get soggy, and then the air's not going to go through it and your compost bin isn't going to work. Probably like me, you got your hot bin because it's quite eco-friendly. So before that, you might already be using the biodegradable bags we used to get them with the council, but then they stopped doing it and you had to buy them. But if you're sort of quite eco-friendly, then you might still be using them, and you might think, because they're biodegradable and they're actually compostable, you might think you can just take your stuff out of your caddy and throw that straight into your hot bin. Well, you can't. That's also going to block the airflow, and they take a little while to break down. So unless you're going to get a pair of scissors and literally cut them up like you would your paper or cardboard, then they're just not going to work. The Hotbin company did do a trial on this and it didn't actually work, so make sure you tip the stuff out, and if you do want to compost the bags, you are going to have to cut them up, shred them up into pieces, which probably is going to be a bit of a pain. To be honest, the most eco-friendly way would be just to put all your ingredients into this one, and then every time just wash it out with a bit of tap water or rainwater. If you're like us and you've got a young family, or you're just into your animals, then you might have pets. So we used to have guinea pigs, and you would think like the sawdust that you put in the cage would be great as bulking agent. Well, it actually isn't, because where bulking agent is quite sort of chippy, the sawdust that goes into most sort of rabbit hutchies and guinea pig hutchies is quite fine. When that gets wet, it creates like a layer that air can't get through. And the same goes for, if you've got one of those hamsters, the sort of thing that fills their cheeks up with all the food, and then they go into that sort of nest and they bury it all in there. Then they normally take all the food out, they hibernate or fall asleep, and then when you go to look for it, it's stone dead. So if that does happen to you, you can actually put the hamster in the hot compost bin if it's died, but don't put its bedding in there. Even if it is natural, it's going to be quite fibrous, and that's just going to create no airflow as well. And the same for straw and this wood shavings. although you can put small amounts in, I wouldn't go putting like lots and lots of it in, because that will get soggy and that will stop the airflow from, you know, going through your hot bin, and then that would just cause it to go cold. If you do want to add, you know, your pet bedding or, you know, shavings, sawdust into your hot bin, then you can add a little at a time, and make sure as you're adding it in it's getting completely stirred up, because even if the sawdust is quite sort of chunky, it isn't going to substitute for bulking agent, so you will definitely still need to put bulking agent in, even if you're putting sort of shavings like this into the hot bin. Also, before I get loads of complaints, don't put your hamster in the compost bin unless it is definitely dead. I know some of you probably think if you have got pets you can't wait to get rid of them, but just make sure if you are going to put something in the hot bin, it is definitely dead. We used to have a hamster when I was younger, and when it sort of went into that hibernation mode, we put it on a hot water bottle and it did sort of come back and, you know, wake up. So don't just go throwing it straight in the hot bin. Definitely make sure you get a vet to confirm that it's dead. It's one of the hottest days of the year, so definitely an excuse to get the Barbie out. And this is probably the smallest one you've ever seen in the world. That's because I'm Billy No Mates and I have to have one on my own. But yeah, you've probably got a bigger barbecue than this. But that's another thing that you shouldn't be putting in your hot bin. So if you do have a barbecue and you think you're going to put the coals in, well, it's almost a no-brainer that you wouldn't put the coals straight in when they're hot. Not only could that ignite in your hot bin, but it could also cause the, you know, the plastic, you know, what the hot bin's made out of, to actually mount. So that is definitely a no-go. And if you have got a load of the charcoal that is, like, you know, gone into that powder and you want to put that in the hot bin, well, you can put small amounts in, but I wouldn't advise putting, you know, a whole load in there. If you add too much of your barbecue ash to your hot bin compost, then that can cause it to go alkaline, which will slow down the composting process. So I would say leave it out and just put it in, you know, your normal garden or wherever you are going to normally dispose of it. Another thing with your barbecue ash is, if you've been barbecuing lots of meats, then that fat content from the meat is probably going to drip into your, you know, your charcoal and create sort of quite a film of grease, which that also, if you put that in the hot bin, that is going to create, you know, a layer that the air isn't going to get through. So that's another reason not to put charcoal ash into the hot bin. Most of us get to Hoover the house at some point, and so in your Hoover you're going to have that sort of contents that just, when you take it out, well, the bin man came this morning, so most of that was in the, you know, the refuse bin. So in your Hoover you're going to have all sorts of stuff in there. So you're going to have hair which takes an awful long time to decompose. If your carpets are synthetic, then you're going to like pick up all the fibres which may contain lots of plastics, and also on the floor where you've just dropped little things, you're going to have like plastics and things like that. So when you've got all that stuff together, that's going to also cause it to clump up and stop the airflow. But mainly for me, it's about, you're going to have stuff that you don't really know what is going into your compost. So you're going to have like fibres of plastics, and you're going to have like just little shards of things that you don't know what they are. So that's another thing I would say, don't put in your hot bin composter. Bloody hell. How'd you get this thing to go in? As you can see, I don't do much hoovering in our house. As I said earlier, it's one of the hottest days of the year here today, so one thing that is important is you keep hydrated, so you make sure you drink plenty of water. But the hot bin shouldn't really need a drink, so that's another thing that you shouldn't put in the hot bin, and that's water or liquids. So we're talking just normal water, gravy, soups, things like that, and also urine. I have been known, because it is supposed to be good for composting, to have a pee in our old compost bin. When you get caught short outside and you just think no one's looking and you just have a quick slash. I know it's not so easy for you women, but for men it is quite easy just to get the old todger out and have a quick slash in there. But that's a no-no in the hot bin. The missus is laughing like crazy. I'm sure she had a go at some stage. But yeah, number one, make sure you don't pour any water in. There are certain circumstances where it might be mega dry, and of course the bacteria does need moisture to, you know, reproduce and create the heat. But generally, if the stuff you're putting in your hot bin is from, from your kitchen and from your garden, and it's not completely bone dry, there should be plenty of moisture in the actual things that you're putting into the hot bin. So while we're filming this, and the missus has stopped laughing, she's just said to me, what about watermelon? Well, normally you would eat it, but if it does go rotten, yes, it does have a lot of moisture in there. And what I would advise with that is just put in a little at a time with quite a lot of paper. But as I say, you don't need to go pouring water in there or having a pee in there. Yogurts and milky products. Well, they're great for making a summer cocktail, which you'll see on our Beanie Composter, Beanie Chef channel. So pop over to Beanie Chef after you've watched some of our composting videos, and that's a great, summer cooler drink. But yogurt products, these are one of the things that shouldn't be going in your hot bin composter, because they are generally too wet and they can cause the hot bin to go smelly. So that's another thing I wouldn't put in huge quantities. If your yogurt or milky products go off, say like cottage cheese, then I wouldn't put that into the hot bin unless it's a real small amount. Anything, that's, like, if I wouldn't go pouring all this into the hot bin, so I would definitely make sure you just leave that out. Another thing not to put in your hot bin composter is what we know in the UK as turf, or in America I think it's known as sods, and it's basically, you see rolls of grass, or if you like, dig up, clumps of grass or clumps of weed, and you've got all the soil on the bottom, then on maybe a normal cold composter you would just throw that straight in there. But with the hot bin, all that soil is gonna get wet, and that's going to prevent air from getting through. So you need to make sure all that soil is taken away before you put anything like your grass, turf or anything like that into it. So make sure you don't put any clumps of soil into your hot bin. Although when your hot bin is working up to temperature, you can put most perennial weeds in, and that's no problem at all, such as your dandelion weeds and you know, ivy, things like that is not going to be a problem. There is one weed that you shouldn't put in your hot bin, and that is Japanese knotweed. I'm sure most of you, if you've bought a house or if you go through that process, then that's one thing that comes up on a search. Has the property got Japanese knotweed? So if you don't really know too much about Japanese knotweed, and I don't know too much, but I do know it's quite ferocious, and it's quite difficult to get rid of. But if you do come across it or you have it, then don't go trying to put that in your Hotbin composter, because that's one of the things that the Hotbin company advise not to put in your Hotbin as well. Some magazines, I'm not saying this Tesco one has it, but some magazines are real glossy and they've got like a plastic coating on them. So just be wary when you're choosing your paper, you know, to go into your Hotbin, that it hasn't got loads of, you know, glossy bits in there. Because if you remember, I think it was the 60-day compost one, when I started to take it out, I noticed loads of like ribbon strands of sort of plastic, and that was because the missus got some shredded paper from, you know, a friend at work. So that's just one thing to be wary of, that someone's pulling wheelies on a motorbike. So but that's one thing to be wary of. And also, like with your fruits and that, sometimes you know, you get those stickers on apples, things like that, that are quite glossy and they don't break down as well in the compost bin. So just, if you're quite, you know, be careful that things like that aren't going into the hot bin, because they won't break down. Found this, you know, when we were cutting the hedge last week, and it made me realise that that's also one thing that you shouldn't put into your hot bin composter. Although the tobacco and the paper is compostable, the actual filters on most of these cigarettes do contain a plastic, so they take an awful long time, if ever, to break down. So that's if you are a smoker and you've got, you know, on your, you know, your outside table, you just keep tabbing them out on, you know, in a bit, and you've got loads of them, don't go throwing those in your hot bin, because they won't decompose. So put them into landfill and let someone else deal with those. Some councils do recycle cigarette ends, so just check out what's going on in your area and just get rid of them responsibly. Okay guys, a quick summary on the bench. No, we haven't transported to Brighton. That's just some seagulls that are randomly around. So, although at this heat it'd be quite nice to be by the beach. But I know at this sort of stage of the video quite a few people probably fall asleep. But for the die-hard viewers, just a quick summary. As I said earlier, most things can go in your hot bin, but just be wary about some of the things I've mentioned. You can put most things in there, but if you are particular about what's going in your hot bin and the compost you're getting out, then these are just a few things just to bear in mind while you are composting. So until next time guys, thanks for watching and happy composting, and enjoy.